Good morning, everyone. My name's Lisa Ashford, and I am CEO of two positive investment platforms, Ethex and Energize Africa. Welcome to our Cuppa Club this week, where I'm really pleased to have two great panelists along with me, and we're going to be finding out more about the organisations that they represent, and they're also both raising finance on the platform at the moment. Just to say that this is a showcase of two great organisations. It's not a financial promotion in any way, and we can't answer any questions specifically relating to your own personal financial circumstances. However, we are open for questions, so if you'd like to submit any questions via the chat function, please do so throughout the call, and I'll try and feed those in and direct them to the right person. If there's any questions that we can send on some additional resources for after the event, we'll also do that. But please get involved. So very happy to welcome in Helen from Common Ground Against Homelessness, based in Edinburgh, and they are raising money at the moment via the platform. And also to Melvin, who is from Calder Valley Land Trust, who are based in West Yorkshire and also raising finance on the platform at the moment. We've had a particularly busy period at Ethex at the moment, and we're raising finance for 7 organisations. 2 of them community energy, but 5 of them all related to providing housing, affordable housing in perpetuity. And I think that's incredibly important at this time in our lives where people are under incredible financial strain, and we also want to see how we can support those people perhaps who are less fortunate than ourselves. And both business models have got really innovative designs which are going to help to provide not just housing, but also potentially other support mechanisms. And so what I propose we do is to hear directly from the organisations themselves. So I'm going to give, Helen, would you like to go first? If you'd like to give us an overview of who you are and your background and why you're raising finance, and then we'll move to Melvin and we'll take some questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello everybody. So I'm Helen Carlin. I live in Edinburgh for 35 years, but originally from the West Melvin. I've run a charity, a homelessness charity, for about 25 years, and for the past 2 years have been desperately struggling in this beautiful city, this beautiful tourist capital of Scotland, to find a building to provide a home for life for men who are currently on the streets, street homeless. I have lost 4 buildings. That makes me sound rather careless. I'm really not, but I have been gazumped, outbid, outmaneuvered for 4 buildings that would have been suitable for our client group. Each time, because they've been private leases, each time the lease has gone for a considerable amount beyond what the charity could afford. Last year, I was offered revenue funding from the Scottish Government to do what we do, which our specialist area, which is providing a home for life for people having lived in the streets for anything up to 30 years. And I literally found it impossible to access a suitable building. So in necessity being the mother of invention, I thought, let's buy a building. And last year, with the support of Community Shares Scotland, set up a community benefit society, because I was perfectly convinced that there were people like me and some of my friends who have invested out there who were sat with a bit of money in the bank, and if we want to end homelessness, the way we do it is actually to put a roof over people's head. So today I'm representing Common Ground Against Homelessness. We're well on our way, thanks to the good work of Ethex and our fantastic investors, to raising the required capital, which is £650,000. With that, we will secure what is currently a large 4-bed house, and we'll turn that into a 9-bed home for life for former street drinkers. So in a nutshell, that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Really great to hear about your work and your lifelong commitment to doing what you're doing. And it's really particularly great to see some projects from Scotland, actually, because we do find that sometimes many of the projects are not representative of our entire geography, and so to have that specific project from Scotland is great, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've had such great support as well. And also to say that last week we announced that we've got £1 million match funding from 2 organisations, People's Postcode Lottery and the MCS Foundation. And People's Postcode Lottery have already deployed some match funding, certainly into Common Ground. Melvin will have to talk about that, and which is really exciting. And so we're thrilled about helping to push you towards your target. So Melvin, tell us about Calder Valley and yourself and how you got involved.
Right, well, Calder Valley, we are in West Yorkshire meets Lancashire, really. We operate in the upper end of a very steep-sided valley with obviously little flat land to build on, and you know, a real shortage of affordable housing. So the Land Trust, Community Land Trust, was formed about 6 years ago, and it's a member-led organisation. Currently, we've got 178 members, and a high degree of interest in what they were doing. I got involved a couple of years ago, but before my time, they took the decision to register as a investment partner with Homes England and provide a register of social housing. And that's it was unusual at the time for a community land trust to go down that route. And apparently it was a very onerous, but it allows us to get grants towards our housing projects, which from Homes England, which is very important. So I got involved. I'm retired now, but my last work was with Amnesty International, and I still chair Amnesty's international charity. My background is as an accountant, and I got involved partly because I knew some of the people involved in the Community Land Trust, and I was always very impressed with how sound and well run it was for a totally voluntary organisation. And that's been my experience, and I now chair the audit committee, the audit and risk committee. Our projects, our primary purpose is provision of affordable housing to rent and in perpetuity for the benefit of the community. But we also have an important job in holding assets on behalf of the community. And this share offer is around a prime asset, the Field and Hall. However, we have been active trying to develop some housing in Hebden Bridge. We cover the sort of townships of Mytholmroyd, Hebden Bridge and Todmorden. The Hebden Bridge site is a very difficult site, and we ran into some planning problems with that. Tried to provide accommodation for younger families. It's a quite an expensive town, Hebden Bridge. But we were able to develop in Todmorden, a part of Todmorden called Walsden, development of 6 bungalows for independent living for older folk. And there's a photograph, I think, if you could show them, Lisa. and there it is. So this was done in partnership with a local alms house charity, and they've bought 2 of these, and we rent out 4 of them. And we were very lucky indeed that we managed to get everybody moved in just about a week before the first lockdown happened. So we've now got and this was very welcome, and there's area of high need in our area. People living in unsuitable accommodation when they get older, and not very accessible. So the current share issue is around the field and acre, we call it. So we were gifted this wonderful community hall facility by a very generous couple who had restored it. And the hall's bookended. There's a house in each side of the hall, and they've come up for sale. And with the land around the hall, and this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to secure the whole site, because it would make life extremely difficult, make the hall very vulnerable if the house is being sold, in the private market. So we're raising this money to buy the land, to buy the 2 houses to rent at affordable rents, and to bring heritage. We've got plans to try and provide an exemplar of the hall, how you bring an old 1870s building into the modern age with, energy efficiency and, all of those kind of things. So it's an exciting project that we might be taking forward in the future. So that's basically what we are doing with our share issue.
Lovely, thank you, Melvin. And Helen, back to you for a moment. Tell us about the property that you have got the opportunity to purchase, and why is it particularly suited to your needs of the charity?
Thanks. It's a 4-bed semi-detached Edwardian property, so very large spaces, very large rooms, and we can make that a 9-bed space. It's a home for life. One of the things that makes it so suitable is that there's enough common room, so that our client group tend not to spend, they have very poor self-care. They will have ongoing problems with addictions. So we actually have the support model that we're using for this. We already do it in one site in Edinburgh, and we help the men manage their money. So we provide, and the tenants pay for 3 square meals a day. That in turn improves their physical health. So one of the things that's so great about the location of this house is that it's near a dentist, it's near a doctor, it's near a local authority hub. So if anybody does wish to access support with their addiction issue, it's literally round the corner. So geographically, it's a fantastic location.
Great. And, for those people listening, maybe they might ask the question about, you mentioned that in particular it was for men who've been homeless for a long time and might have alcohol issues. What kind of support services do they need to really help turn their lives around?
So the support that we currently offer in our Thorntree Street site, it's 24/7. What you tend to find, the problem with street homelessness is people will not come in off the street because they have that addiction issue. And a lot of the available accommodation is temporary. It's in hostels, and there's a very low tolerance and quite a low understanding of the addiction issues. The difference that we make is that we actually understand that. We help with something, the technical term is a managed alcohol program, but basically we work with a harm reduction model. And once our gentlemen come in and feel safe and secure, and have their medical needs attended to and their emotional needs more met, they tend to reduce the amount that they drink. They tend to improve their self-care, and the staff are there on hand to help with that and help them lead a more dignified and more fulfilling life. You'll find that if you've been on the street for a very long time, and if you've had an addiction issue for a very long time, you've probably already experienced some degree of alcohol-related brain damage. So our client group would have a very small chance of flourishing in an independent flat, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, that's interesting to just learn a bit more about that. And someone's asked, what do you mean by a home for life? And are there any other examples of this elsewhere in Scotland?
I'm actually not, that's a great question, thanks. I'm actually not aware of any similar provision elsewhere in the UK. So at Thorntree and in the upcoming one through Common Ground, it is literally your home for the rest of your life. And that in itself is really very, very unique. As I've said, it's the lack of, sorry, it's the lack of suitable accommodation with the support that keeps people on the street. So as far as I'm aware, Thorntree is the only thing of its type. Once you come to us, that literally is your home for life. Rowan Alba have run Thorntree successfully for 17 years. In that time, we've had 75 gentlemen stay with us, and with two exceptions. One man chose to become sober, and we supported him into an independent flat, but that's really unusual. People are with us until they die, in essence.
Well, it's quite humbling, actually, to hear, what amazing work you're doing there. Melvin, tell us about the communities around the property that you are working with, and what is the sort of target for you, if you like, in terms of providing that affordability?
Right, well, this part of the world is certainly this end of the valley, very strong resilience. We're about 10 miles from Rochdale, where the building society movement and the cooperative movement started, and we're a big Chartist area as well, and it's an old mill town, so it's had its real rough times in the last few years with the closure of all the mills. But the people are very very resilient, and of course we've had serious flooding now on about 3 occasions since I moved here, and people have had to kind of sweep up and get on with it. And during those floods, you would have seen this sort of community spirit and neighbourliness. The town hall kitchen was full of volunteers cooking and making food for people who had been flooded, and getting supplies out to them. So it's a great spirit around here. And the hall itself sits at the edge of a very lovely park called Centreville Park. And we'd be very keen to try and sort of integrate it more into the park, so that it becomes a kind of a real feature. We're aiming to raise £150,000 from this issue, and if we get that from individuals, we'll get a booster fund match for another 50,000. So that would, I guess our optimum figure would be about 170. We've set a maximum of 220 because the project's being funded by a mixture of grant, loan, share issue. So we fixed a maximum, and if we get to that maximum, it means that we'd have to borrow less, and it would be very good for the project. I should say that this hall was donated, was originally a school of art by quite a famous family in Todmorden called the Fieldens. Honest John Fielden was an MP who brought in the 10-hour Act to limit the amount of time that children could spend working in the mills. Sounds very progressive, doesn't it? 10 hours a day. But they were a very wealthy family, and in fact, the daughter-in-law set up a school for girls in 1871 on this site, and it became an art school. So the name carries quite a lot around in this part of the world.
Thanks, Melvin. Helen, there's a question around selection of the men that you help. How do you make that selection process?
We don't. So in Edinburgh, where Rowan Albert is based, there is something called the Access Point, and it acts as a sort of hub for homeless people. So we take who we are given. So it's whoever is in the most need. Right.
Okay. And obviously it takes a little while to raise the finances that you need. How are you stopping someone else coming in and buying this property? You talked about getting gazumped before.
Yes, we were gazumped 4 times when we tried to lease privately. We've had a very patient homeowner. In this instance, it's an occasion where COVID has been kind to us. We submitted an in-principle offer subject to planning, which has been approved. And I'm delighted to say that this time, very shortly, we'll be able to draw down the full funds and take on the house, hopefully just before Christmas, which is, it's going to be an amazing Christmas gift, I have to say.
Yeah, right.
In our case, Lisa, whilst the people who own the houses are the people who donated the hall to us and were very involved in the running of the hall, for due diligence purposes, we entered into an exclusivity agreement with them. Right. They're not going to put it on the market or take offers for a period of time. It takes us past the end of the share launch, so that there's no danger of that happening to us.
Right, great. And Helen, you mentioned, or Melvin, sorry, mentioned COVID. Has that affected your plans in any way? Melvin first.
Well, it made us, I think, quite nervous about the launch, because you never quite know in these times what's going to happen. But we're quite optimistic now, having seen the first couple of weeks. But yes, the hall's been used. Most of the bookings had to be cancelled. It's a very big wedding and celebration venue. So, and in fact, I had booked it for last week for my golden wedding. And everybody's had to cancel, but fortunately they haven't taken their deposits back. But it's been used for food distribution, and they've managed until this latest lockdown to get some activities back. But their big income, thing that really sustains it are the weddings and celebrations. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. I should say that the hall's run by another charity. So one charity owns it and another charity runs it. So
right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about impact, and then we're going to talk about financial returns. So obviously, both of you, with the background that you have, I would imagine that you're very comfortable with reporting and measuring impact. How do you do that for these particular projects? What do you have particular targets or metrics that you're working towards? Is it Melvin and then Helen?
I don't think we particularly do it for this project alone. We certainly need to do it for the organisation as a whole, and taking across all of our projects and trying to measure our social impact. But for this project, I think the impact would clearly be that we'd succeed in securing this heritage asset. But we are currently working at developing one for the whole of the land trust.
Okay, and Helen?
Well, yeah, thanks. So I've got two hats on here. In terms of Common Ground's impact, it is to be able to supply affordable housing to charities who want to provide supported accommodation. And I'm hopeful that this is the first of many such projects that Common Ground will undertake. In terms with my other hat on as CEO of Rowan Alba, yes, we have outputs coming out of arrears depending on who the funding is received from. In terms of this revenue funding, which is coming from the Scottish Government, it's about keeping people safe. But one of the interesting things that I think I should mention about this model is that we commissioned a very small but robust look at social return on investment on the Thorntree model. And we found that for every £1 of revenue that we spent supporting the men, we actually saved the public purse £3. And I was a little bit surprised it was so much, but as I say, it was financially robust and you know, I think speaks for itself.
Yeah, exactly.
As taxpayers.
So we have some more questions, Helen, specifically about supporting people who've got addiction issues. But before we come to that, maybe we could talk about sort of risk and return of these types of projects a little bit. And obviously, our investors invest and support as members of the community benefit societies, you know, as much for impact as they do for financial return in many cases, if not more so. The return that you're proposing to pay is, it varies obviously depending on the business model, but did you consider using any kind of tax relief as well on top of the financial return? I'm not sure whether you may have looked at any of the tax reliefs. Yeah.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to get support from Dave Boyle through Community Shares Scotland. And we did look into this. There are two, I'm not going to possibly use the correct terminology, but I did check with him yesterday. So we weren't eligible for the EIS tax incentive scheme because at the centre of the share offer is a tangible asset in the form of properties. So it's not risky enough. And there was something else that we weren't eligible for, but I would have to check my email. And that's because we're actually putting people in rooms and receiving rent. So as far as I'm aware, yeah, we did look at that, but sadly, no.
Right. Melvin, slightly different model, but possibly similar situation.
Yes, I mean, our understanding is that property development isn't a qualifying trade for any of the enterprise investment or social enterprise tax schemes. So I'm afraid that's not open to us. Yeah, we are offering 2%, a maximum of 2%. And we take that very seriously. In fact, the board have resolved that they will pay that, and if the sky falls in and anything would prevent it, then we'd go to a special meeting of our members, because we're a member-led organisation. And it's one member, one vote, no matter how many shares you have. But we certainly have a very strong intention to pay that.
Right. Thank you both. Now, Helen, I've got some quite specific questions coming in here, as I mentioned, about helping to manage those with addiction issues and also perhaps helping them to get on a path towards sobriety, if you want to call it that. How do you deal with perhaps are the challenging behaviours that make community living quite complex? How do you deal with that? And do you have targets in terms of trying to help people to reduce alcoholism?
Okay, so with my Rowan Alba hat on, how we deal with it is that we recruit the right staff with the right attitude, who have tons of compassion and patience for our clients. In terms of encouraging people to cut down, as I mentioned, I don't like using jargon, but we call it managed alcohol program, and that is really helping people deal with their health. So if they're on, generally when people come in off the streets, they're consuming very high strength alcohol. So we encourage them to change their buying habits, and generally help them to reduce the number of alcohol units that they're taking in a week, and help them manage their health. As I mentioned about Peffermill, the current project, it's near one of our local authority hubs. So if any of our gentlemen decided that they wanted to become sober, the professional help and support would be just round the corner. But in terms of managing this, in terms of dealing with this client group, for instance, our team leader down at Thorntree, a guy called Declan, is a man that worked with people in the streets in London and Edinburgh for 20 plus years. So it's a lot of that. A lot of what Rowan Alba will bring to it is recruiting the right staff, training them in a certain way so that they're able to work with this client group. And I'm absolutely, I know that somebody had asked me previously about things like tenant damage. I'm comfortable to sit on the Common Ground board because I know the quality of the work that Rowan Alba has done over the past 17 years with this client group. So in terms of this first share offer, and in terms of the building, you know, we've spent 17 years, or with my Rowan Alba hat on, we've spent 17 years getting better and better at this.
Right, thank you.
We know what we're doing.
Good. Yeah, and I hope, you know, just speaking to you and people getting a sense of your experience hopefully really goes to show that you know what you're talking about, and you know what you're doing, and you've got great organizations that you work with to help support that, because you can't do it alone, obviously. So a couple of questions here which I'm just going to address. There's a question with regards to investing on behalf of younger folk, and younger than me, that is. And so what you can do is you can provide a nomination form, which means that when you die, the shares can be passed to a member of your family, for example, without making up part of your estate. So it's a quite a clean transition. So that's something that you can do. And you sometimes can invest on behalf of children as well. It depends on the rules of the Community Benefit Society. And, you know, we can always answer those questions specifically if anyone has questions directly on that for the different projects. There was also a question with regards to interest paid. So that is, interest is paid gross, and therefore individual investors are, it's their responsibility to make sure that they pay the appropriate tax if that is relevant for them. And there's a question around transferable bonds, which can be included within an innovative finance ISA, but it has to be a debt-based product to be admissible for that tax umbrella. So unfortunately, no, withdrawable shares don't qualify for that. There are a number of organisations who are starting to use community bonds alongside withdrawable shares so that they can qualify. But I think it's really up to the organisation as to whether they think that's appropriate for them or not. You don't become a member if you invest via a debt product, and there is more commitment to the organisation to pay the return. However, you know, as I said, it can be a useful tool alongside community shares or withdrawable shares as well. Okay, so more questions. Are either of your models at risk due to any government cutbacks at all? Melvin, would that affect you?
No, our model is built on sustainable revenue streams, but we rely on government grants through Homes England for for building development, but we wouldn't start on anything without a commitment, which we've got for this particular project. We've got a commitment from Homes England to give grants. So clearly, withdrawal of government funding from the programme would be damaging to the community land trust movement, to community providers of housing, but wouldn't damage our business model.
Helen?
Our business model is based on LHA rates, local housing allowances. They have never reduced in the whole time they've been going. So we're assured of that rent, and the risk for the rent for voids, etc., sits with Rowan Alba. Okay. And our void rate at Thorntree would be something like 3%, because, and just in terms, and it's quite sad to note that I don't think we'll ever run out of homeless people to provide accommodation for. In fact, I think in the near future that's going to get quite a lot worse. And in terms of our market, for numbers of homeless people, we have approximately 50 homeless people back on the streets in Edinburgh at the moment. So we could have quite a few of these. Yeah.
Right. Another question, it's with regards to the management of the property in terms of setup. So did it need a change of approval from the local authority in terms of using the house as a multiple occupancy?
Yes, the planning work's all been done, and that's that. In fact, it was amazing that we managed to get that through at a time of COVID.
Right.
Yes, that's all in place. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And there was another question regarding, lots of questions today. Is there a contract with tenants, and do they have a, how to put this, a standard of behaviour that they need to adhere to in order to continue living there?
There will be a contract with each tenant. There are standards of behaviour that we ask people to adhere to. That doesn't always happen because of the nature of the addiction and the alcohol-related brain damage. And that's why the staff that we have that are understanding of that are so key in the success of the Thorntree model. Yeah. So if to summarise, we had a visit to Thorntree last year from Joe Fitzpatrick, who's our Minister of Public Health in Scotland. And he was chatting to one of our gentlemen who told him that in other places, when he got drunk, he got thrown out. Here, they just put me to my bed. So, in a very human way, that I think explains the sort of work that we do and the sort of client that Roy and Alba have developed the expertise with.
Right, because otherwise I can imagine that you know, this is a problem that just continues to revolve and never gets solved. So
this is the, yes, and this is what's a little different about it, and explains the saving to the public purse, that our clients will have ongoing relationships with criminal justice, or will go to A&E if they don't feel well. Once they're with us, we see that tapering off and ending as they get the support that they need in their own home.
Right. Thank you for that. There was a question with regards to, so withdrawable shares are something which are quite novel to some people, because they're used to transferable shares that they invest in, you know, companies limited by shares that might be listed on the stock exchange or directly perhaps. And the concept of withdrawable shares is quite a different thing. The ability to withdraw money and the sort of liquidity associated with your money is obviously something which comes up time and time again. So could both of you talk to the withdrawable rules that you have within your business model? Helen, I believe you have a share account where the interest is paid. Could you just talk to us a little bit about that?
So from 2024, our business model says that 6% of the share capital can be withdrawn with whatever interest rate you've elected to take. So yes, so that's when people can start. But obviously, if we have more than 6% of people or 6% of the share capital, then that will be done on a first come, first served basis. When we set up the share offer, we knew we had about £100,000 from people who intend to leave that for a very long time. And in order to keep going with that withdrawal of share capital, we're in discussions with a couple of grants and or major funders to come in at the back to fund that. And we have actually secured already £40,000 to go into that pot to allow us to do that. We don't, Common Ground Against Homelessness doesn't have charitable status yet. That's one thing that where COVID has not been kind to us, because there's been a very lengthy wait. So hopefully but we expect to get that early in the new year.
Okay.
Continue on that.
And Melvin, what's your model?
Well, we're very clear in all the documentation, etc., that we're really hoping for people to invest for the long term. This is an investment in their community. Obviously, we do have the provision for withdrawing of shares from 2024 as well. But this would be at the discretion of the board, and obviously it depends on liquidity, and we've put a maximum of 5% in any 1 year. But we intend to raise more shares, in fact, to pay off the loan in 5 years' time. So and I should have mentioned earlier, Helen, we actually have had a share issue for the Walston development, but that was to our existing members. And one of the things that we offer, of course, is people can choose the rate either for this offer of 2%, 1%, or nothing at all. And they can also choose to pass the shares back on their death. So these are options which just try and reinforce the fact that this is a long-term, we think, for a long-term investment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that's very clear. Question: How have the two charities fared with bank lending? Melvin, you mentioned that you'd had a loan as well.
Yes, we part of our Walston developments funded by a loan from the Unity Trust Bank. and that's all in place now. I think it's quite a learning experience when you do commercial loans with the banks, when you're having to read the small print extremely carefully and count up the number of fees which you have to pay. We've steered away from that for this particular development. We have it there as sort of in the background if we had to, but
right.
We'd rather go to our community.
Yes, absolutely. And what we often find is due to speed, sometimes the communities will use this sort of blended finance approach to be able to get to their target as quickly as possible, and then refinance out the more expensive debt over time to the community by doing another share offer. Obviously, what we would like to happen is, as soon as we put the share offers up on the platform, they're filled with such speed that we don't even need the banks, unless they're obviously the ethical ones, because they're doing a very good job for all of our organisations. Not quite there yet, but we hope we will get there in time. And Helen, is that part of your financing mix as well?
Due to the success of the share offer, it's not going to be, but obviously we're a start-up at Common Ground. We have no track record, and we did speak to several banks, but because we were so new and nothing on the balance sheet, they weren't especially interested. We did revisit them when we were sat in our sort of middle lull of the share offer, and we did find a couple of banks that were willing to speak to us, and I think that was on the back of seeing the community investment.
Right.
Because certainly when we thought about the model for this, for me, part of the Community Benefit Society is actually explaining to people about homelessness. So I'm very excited by the prospect of having members that might sound a bit patronising, but learn a little bit more about the causes of homelessness and how we could actually, I do still believe we could fix it before I retire, please.
And this is the thing as well, isn't it, that I mentioned we have 5, I think, community land trusts or similar raising on the platform for affordable housing at the moment. And people often say, well, homelessness is such a national huge issue and crisis. How can you possibly think that you'll make a mark when you're doing relatively small projects? But of course, these are like little things that can be fully replicated and can spread right across the country. And there is a place for every community to have its own community housing, community energy, community owned whatever it is, town hall or pub that's providing services to all of those residents, and more, which Melvin, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the Community Land Trust Network, I mean, there are just short of 300 now in the country, but over half of them have been formed in the last 2 years.
Right.
And there's about 16,500 homes in the pipeline coming to fruition in the next 4 years. So this is going to be ramping up. It's of its time, and I think we'll see a real growth in this. So it's partly about the provision, but it's also partly about community control and communities solving their own issues. Exactly. And that's really very important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, this solves for us, some of our key themes are fighting climate change, building more resilient communities, and reducing poverty. And this, obviously goes to 2 of those straight away. So, it's incredibly important. Okay, so coming towards the end now, I'm just going to round up with another last question, which we might have addressed in part, so apologies if we have. But once Common Ground gets charitable status, could you get money from a charitable trust to invest in the project? We might get to the target before that.
We will.
Might not need it, but hopefully for future offers. Yes, you are planning to, are you planning to buy the building and require funds for this before you get charitable funding finalised?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, we're aiming to pay for the building very shortly, and to get in there as soon as possible. Yeah, obviously, because I work for Rowan Alba, we know some nice grants and trusts that are very interested in this. So I'll probably come off this call and get straight back onto Oscar to badger them for Common Ground's charitable status. And I think one of the reasons why that is so important is to service the debt there. But the other reason that I'm actually very passionate about this and have invested heavily in Common Ground myself is I know that the public donate millions and millions of pounds every year to homelessness charities. And I guess I'm long enough in the tooth to be quite curious as to where, you know, not where the money goes, but what exactly are we doing with it? Homelessness has become its own sector. And actually it could be as simple as putting a roof over folks' heads.
Right.
Sermon over.
Yeah, yeah, but this is exactly what Ethex is all about. It's about people having a direct connection with their money and actually seeing tangible results. And that's what we can, you know, promise people, is that they will be able to see what they're investing in, and, you know, can go and visit it if they want to, and really understand more about the organizations that they are investing in by becoming a member, which is one of the wonderful things of community benefit societies and community shares. So on that note, I think we should round up. And someone did ask earlier, how much have you raised? So let's just have a quick look. So Helen, you're on 98%. That's jumped even in the time we've been speaking, I think. So 638,000 raised for a 650 target. Can you go over your target?
Oh, sorry, I'm like somebody from Antiques Roadshow when they've just discovered their granny's vases. That's amazing.
Can you raise, or is 650?
I would need to speak to the rest of the board.
Yeah.
You know, there is a board there behind me, so
yes.
Let me check in with them. But thank you. And if you are on this call and you have invested, then once the building's up and running, the kettle will be on, and I can't thank you enough, because you are literally getting 9 folk off the streets by supporting us. Amazing.
And Melvin, we are at 92,000 out of a 270 target. So a little ways to go, but you've been not listed quite as long, I don't think, and we'll get there soon.
Yeah, well, our minimum is 150, and then we get the booster money coming in. So yeah, that's going well. Thank you.
And hopefully we'll have some more match funding going in as well.
That'd be great.
So, thank you, Helen and Melvin. Absolute pleasure to talk to you. Please carry on doing all the wonderful work you're doing. And if anyone is interested in finding out more information, obviously you can go to our website. You should read the share offer documents, of course. Yeah, it's just great to be working with you on these really valuable community schemes. So well done, and look forward to speaking to you again, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.